Yeah, we are into the second unit now, and we're going to start talking about circles and all these things that have to do with circles. And we're going to start out by talking about circles in the coordinate plane and specifically their equations. So we have a standard equation of a circle, and it goes a little something like this. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And there's two things we need to know about a circle in the coordinate plane in order to write its equation and eventually graph it. And that is the coordinates of the center of the circle. And we get those coordinates by looking at the equation. And here's h, and there's k. And h is the x value of the center of the circle. K is the y value of the center of the circle. So that'll help us get the center. We also need to know the circle's radius. And you can see kind of clearly, I think, that r here is the radius. So one thing to point out here is that in the standard equation of the circle, we have subtraction inside these parentheses. So that means if I'm looking at an equation of a circle and I see subtraction, that actually means that the coordinates for the center are positive. If I see addition inside here, then the coordinates for the center of the circle are negative. So that'll become clear once we try a couple examples. So here I have a circle in the coordinate plane, and I want to write its equation. So I need to know a couple things about it. I need to know its center, and I need to know its radius. And I'll always start when I'm trying to write an equation of a circle by writing the standard form. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And again, as I've said in videos past, if you do that, if you make this your habit, then you'll remember these things easier. So I can go locate the center. The center of this circle is at 4, 2. And I also need the radius of the circle. The radius is the distance from the center to any point on the circle. So I can easily count up, down, left, or right, and that'll tell me the radius is 1, 2, 3, 4 units. So now I can take this information and plug it into the standard equation and simplify, and I can have myself an equation that describes this circle. So remember that the center is hk, so that means that 4 goes in for h and 2 goes in for k. And my radius is r, so 4 goes in for r. And I want to simplify this side over here so that my equation looks like this. X minus 4 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 16. And you can see the x and the y, the center of my circle, were positive 4 and positive 2. When I look at the equation, there are minus signs inside the parentheses because that's how the standard form is. So when my center coordinates are positive, they're going to kind of look negative in the equation, but that's just because of the way the formula is set up. So I want you to pause here. I want you to write the equation of this circle that I've drawn in the coordinate plane and use your example. Make sure you write the equation, write it every time, and then press play and check your answer. So I found that my center is negative 8, 1. And I can find my radius to be 1, 2, 3. Start by writing my standard form of my equation so that all I have to do now is find out where I need to plug in numbers. I plug in negative 8 for h, 1 for k, and 3 for r. And I can simplify this minus and minus make x plus 8, and my 3 squared becomes 9 to get my final answer. So again, the x value of my coordinates for the center of the circle was negative in this case, and when we write the equation, there's a plus sign that happens, and that's again because the original standard form has a minus, and a minus and a minus make a plus. So if we can do the opposite kind of what we just did, if we have the equation of a circle and we want to know quickly where's its center located, and how big is the radius, we can kind of do the opposite of what we just did. And I always like to write, again, the standard form. I'll write it above or below the equation I get so I can see which numbers correspond with which letters. So I can see here 3 is going to correspond with H in some way, 11 and K, 10 is going to correspond with R in some way. So I'm going to ask myself, what number should I plug in for H to make minus H become plus 3? And that number is minus 3. And the number I plug in for minus K to make it minus 11 is just positive 11. So again, if there's a plus sign, that means the value is negative. If there's a minus sign, it means the value is positive. It kind of goes against maybe how you would feel about it, but that's what happens when we use this equation. We need to find the radius. Well, the radius squared is equal to 10. We just want to know r, so we'll square root both sides, and we find that the radius is equal to the square root of 10. We don't want to plug this in our calculator and get some decimal, because we want to know that the exact radius is the square root of 10. We don't want to know that it's approximately 3 point something. Okay, we want to know the exact value, so we'll just leave it, even though you might be a little uncomfortable doing it this way. We'll leave it as r equals root 10. So pause. Seriously, pause. Make sure you try this. Make sure you write the standard form of the circle. Write it every time. You'll never forget it. And then press play and check your answer. So I've got my standard form. I see that there's a minus here, so that means the center, that h is positive 3. Because there's a plus 2 here, that means k is negative 2. So there's my center. R squared equals 25. Square root of both sides, and I find that r is nice and neat. The radius of this circle is equal to 5. So sometimes we don't know the radius of the circle. We know the center of the circle, and we know one of the points that are on the circle, but we can still write the equation. We know the center. All we're going to have to do is find the radius. So there's my center, and there's my point that's on the actual circle that we would draw. So I can start writing my equation by starting with the standard form, and then I can plug in my h and k and simplify that. And now I need to find r. I can't write my equation of a circle without knowing what the value of r is. So I have 2 coordinates, 2 points in the coordinate plane. The radius is how far apart they are. So that brings us back to lesson 3, the distance formula, which we used Pythagorean theorem. We took the x's and we subtracted them, so negative 4 and 2. Took the y's and subtracted them, negative 3 and positive 2. Simplified. And we get that the radius, which in our Pythagorean theorem is going to be c, the value for c. C represents the radius we just found. It's the distance between the center and the point, is root 61. Now we can go back up and grab what we did here and just complete it using the radius. So we'll plug in root 61 for r. The square of a square root cancels those 2 things, and we're left with just 61 on this side, and there's our final equation. Whenever we write the equation of a circle, we're going to have an x at the end, we're going to have a y, and everything else should be some sort of number. So I kind of summed up that process here of finding the equation of a circle if you have a center and a point. So we start by plugging in the center and simplifying. We use our Pythagorean theorem to find the radius, and then we plug in. And I'm reiterating here, you should have an xy in your final answer. If you don't, then we've done something wrong, or maybe you've gone too far. So here's the example I wanted you to try. I was trying to find it earlier. I forgot where I put it. Here it is. So you can use those, that summary I just did, plus your example, pause the video, use the center and point to find the equation of a circle. So again, step one was to always write the standard form and then plug in the center. I'm going to delete this and get this out of our way. Now we need to find the radius. We're going to use Pythagorean theorem. Oops, I skipped a step. Plugging in, subtracting our x's, subtracting our y's, simplifying, getting that c, which is the radius in this case, is the square root of 80. And then we can come back here, grab the work we did in blue, grab root 80, plug it in for r, and then just simplify that the square root of 80 squared is just 80. And we have our final answer. So we got 3 you-dos for you. They should be similar to the ones you just did in this lesson. Go ahead and give those a shot. Check your answers when you come to class.